So I'm Sammy Aaron, and I'm the founder of the Resilient Activist, and I'm really delighted to have you here. If you've come in since I mentioned it in the chat, please put a location where you're zooming in from, maybe a little bit about an organization or mission that you work with as an activist, and just a sentence or so about why you were interested in joining us tonight, kind of what caught your eye. I am a meditation teacher focusing on nature-centered meditation. I'm an environmental activist volunteering with a number of environmental groups, mostly focusing on land use and restoration of pollinator habitat. I'm an extension master naturalist, a nature-connected educator. I'm a registered yoga teacher and meditation teacher, and I'm a climate reality leader, gleaned more global perspective on climate change and climate justice through Al Gore's climate reality leadership training. And I'm the founder of the Resilient Activist. I'll introduce our facilitators kind of quickly here, and then each one of them has their own story to explain what they'll be doing and kind of what their perspective will be for the research study that we are working on that you're all invited to participate in. So this tonight is just an introduction. We want to give you the full scoop, you know what you're getting into, and you can make a decision between now and next Tuesday night whether you'd like to participate. So we have Tyler Staples will be leading off. He's the lead investigator for this project. He's a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology at Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences. Eric Hulse is a retired police officer who's trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction. He teaches for the Midwest Alliance for Mindfulness. Julia Grimm is a yoga and meditation teacher with Midwest Alliance for Mindfulness also, and she's a licensed on our board of directors and our speakers bureau. She focuses on wellness and mindfulness classes for the Resilient Activist. So there's more information, there's videos on the original page where you registered that gives more information about each of these teachers. But at this point, I'm going to stop my share and hand it over to Tyler Staples.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interestingly enough, the stuff that I have to share as far as slides and any sort of screen share, I'm going to actually avoid for the time being. I'll just kind of talk through a little bit about what we're planning on for the curriculum and kind of what we want out of this project and all that kind of good stuff. I'll kind of reintroduce myself as well. Yes, my name is Tyler Staples. Good to meet everybody. I am a doctoral student at Kansas City University. I'm actually on campus right now. So that's why there's a brain behind me. I became interested in resilience because of it's part of my dissertation research actually. I am also lead researcher for what's called the Thrive program here at KCU. Which is built actually off of the curriculum that was used for my dissertation and the curriculum that I use for the trainings that we'll be doing here. So it's really, really great stuff. It's all based in research. I'm really excited to be able to kind of share it. One of my intentions with the trainings was to start small, start KCU focused, my university KCU focused with the med students, and just expand it from there and kind of expand it to the community at large. My partnering with the Resilient Activist is one of those, is part of that goal, and was actually one of the first steps that I took in sharing it with the community at large. We're actually looking at partnership as well with the Kansas City Police Department. Excited about that, and then a couple of other med schools here in the Kansas City area. So it's really kind of exploded very recently, but it's all passion projects for me, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with you guys. As far as the curriculum is concerned, I'll kind of run through some of the topics that we'll actually be talking about. I don't want to give too much away, but the research in resilience is kind of scattered, to be completely honest. It's a gap area in research, which is good because that means there's a lot to be discovered. The best that we can tell is we have what are called correlates of resilience, and these are psychological attributes that tend to exist within individuals that are more resilient. So the thinking behind the curriculum that I've put together, and that we've put together even here with the Resilient Activist, is this really kind of takes advantage of those correlates. So things like coping flexibility, cognitive flexibility, social support, and even just perceived social support. The ability to handle crises is part of it as well. Optimism, at least what's called realistic optimism, which we'll talk about as part of the trainings, and a number of other things that we'll end up talking about. So the goal with my trainings is first to kind of talk a little bit, very, very briefly, about the research that exists thus far, kind of talking about a working definition of resilience, because we're going to be using that to launch into the concepts and even the skills that we'll be working on and practicing in the sessions. And then we're going to launch right into the session, the concepts and the techniques themselves. So some of the techniques that we'll talk about beyond just defining the resilience is building upon what we already have. There's nobody out there that exists that is not already to some degree resilient. And we really need to build upon a foundation that already exists. We really don't want to start from scratch. So we'll talk about things like current motivation, specifically what's called intrinsic motivation. We'll get to that concept when we get to the trainings. The values, values-based living and values exploration. We'll do some of that as well. We'll talk about contingency planning when crises come around. How do we handle those, both from a cognitive standpoint, using our thinking patterns, emotionally, and then mindfully as well. We'll talk about acceptance. We'll talk about realistic optimism. We'll talk about ways in which we can challenge our thinking patterns to become more adaptive. And I don't want to say more positive, because that's not necessarily always the case, but at least more adaptive, and to be able to have our thinking patterns actually help us out so they're useful. And then we'll also talk a little bit about acceptance too. A lot of this is based in research-backed therapeutic methods, psychological theories. So if you're interested or involved at all in psych, these are things like acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavior theory, cognitive behavioral theory, and a few others. A lot of mindfulness though. So it blends really well into mindfulness-based stress reduction, some of the things that Eric's is going to be talking about in the second half of the curriculum. A couple other things that we'll also be talking about kind of midway through the curriculum as a whole, kind of at the end of your time with me, is going to be talking about how to build effective habits, build effective goals, but also build effective habits. It is very difficult, and the research is very clear on this. It is very difficult to build habits as adults. We build habits very easily as children, but it takes a little bit more willpower and effort to do it as adults. We're going to talk about a few tips and tricks to be able to develop new habits, including the habits that hopefully you'll be building with the skills that we'll be practicing in here. The basic layout, at least for my part of the curriculum, the first 4 sessions we'll talk about a skill or a concept for about more or less half of the time. And then we're going to break into smaller groups led by a small groups facilitator. And we're going to either discuss the skill using discussion questions or we're going to practice an actual skill. So that could look like, I'm not going to be doing too much deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, because that's what a lot of what Eric's going to be working with you guys with. But we'll do some of that. We'll do some of that values exploration that I talked about. We should get to know each other very well in some of those small groups. So like I said, I'm really excited. I'm glad to be involved. I'm very passionate about this stuff. My hope is that with everybody that joins in the sessions themselves, that it will be a lot of open discussion and kind of be a little bit informal at times. I'm really looking forward to it. The last thing that I'll say is that there is a research component to this that we're hoping to do. We do want to collect some data off of this. It is not required for you to participate in research if you are part of the training sessions. We want individuals to just be able to take advantage of the trainings. If you want to help in research, obviously it's always going to be completely anonymous, de-identified data and all that. It's going to be really kind of quick and easy assessments that are going to be administered only 3 times, at the beginning, at the end, and then on follow-up. We were thinking about maybe doing I take that back, possibly a 4th. We were thinking about maybe doing a mid-session evaluation too, but I promise they're very short, very simple. So I think that's everything that I had for you guys. If I missed something, Sammy, let me know. But I think that's everything. Did I miss anything?
I don't think yet. We'll
Okay,
find
good
out.
deal. All right. And of
Thanks,
course, we're
Tyler.
going to leave, yeah, we're going to leave time at the end for questions too. So if you guys have any questions, need for clarification, I'll be here for that. So with that, I will pass it over to Eric. Eric, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tyler. And hi, everyone. Again, my name is Eric Halls. I will be co-facilitating the second 4 weeks of this journey with Julia. As Sammy said, I am a retired police officer. I was a cop in the Kansas City area for 25 years, retired about 6 years ago. And as you might imagine, needed some relief from that experience after I retired, discovered mindfulness and meditation and experienced such a benefit from it fairly quickly that I started to undertake teacher training and now teach MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, through the Midwest Alliance for Mindfulness. I also do a good bit of training with first responders, police, fire, and combat veterans with PTSD, as well as the Missouri Department of Corrections, working with inmates and correctional officers. So I'm delighted to be here with this population of folks to share mindfulness and the ways in which it might help you sort of illuminate a path forward as activists. So just very quickly, the focus for our series, Julia and I, will be to provide information about mindfulness for stress reduction, to provide a context for that information, as well as an opportunity to explore how you can apply the information to your new or existing mindfulness practice. Our intention is to just share how this spectrum of mindfulness methods can become a regular embodied practice that you can undertake and evaluate within what we like to think of as the laboratory of your own body and mind, rather than merely as an intellectual exercise. So every meeting is going to involve as much practice as possible, as well as opportunities to share your experiences in a supportive container and ask questions. Another intention of ours is to help you just discover or discern a path to deepening your existing mindfulness practice, starting a personal practice by sharing our personal experiences, as well as sort of best practices guidelines that you can use as a reference after you complete this course. As far as takeaways go, it's just our genuine hope that you'll leave the series with a deeper understanding of how you might navigate your interior world with greater peace, so that you can engage the exterior world as an activist with greater equanimity, purpose, and resilience. As the poet Rumi once wrote, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." Just a quick overview of the 4 weeks of our piece of this program. We'll begin our first session together by talking about the ways in which our biology does and doesn't serve us, and how mindfulness, which was first introduced over 2,600 years ago, has developed over time to help human beings enhance our biological advantages and manage our disadvantages through attention and awareness training. From the very beginning of our series, though, we're going to gradually shift from the science to the practice of stress reduction. As we progress, the proportion between theory and practice will favor practice more and more and more. And even by the end of our very first session, we will have already introduced 3 meditation practices. In week 2, present moment awareness will again be the primary focus, and we'll introduce the idea of reorienting our attention toward uninvited and even potentially disruptive or disabling emotions by shifting our understanding about pain and suffering, for instance. We'll talk about how mindfulness can be integrated into just about every facet of your daily life, not just through formal meditation. And Julia will introduce us to the practice of mindful movement. In week 3, we'll introduce a little more brain science. I'll talk about something called the default mode network, which describes areas in our brain that are activated during mind wandering and which are strongly correlated with rumination, anxiety, and depression. We'll also discuss the concept of neuroplasticity, which is sort of an umbrella term that refers to the brain's ability to adapt its structure and its functionality in response to experience through our lives. And we'll continue to expand and increase our meditation practices throughout the course. And we'll introduce practices in week 3 that have as their primary motivation the cultivation of compassion for ourselves and others. Not that anyone really needs the science to believe it, but it turns out that regularly opening our heart to others and deepening our compassion for their suffering has been shown to increase our own happiness, and even to literally shrink the areas in the brain like the amygdala, which can actually increase in size as a result of trauma and in response to anxiety and depression. And then we'll wrap it up in week 4 by reflecting first on what arose throughout the first 3 weeks. We'll talk in detail about how mindfulness and meditation can be integrated fully into your daily life, and take a few more longer, deeper dives into practice together. And then every meeting from week 1 to week 4 will conclude with suggestions for home practice that you'll be invited to explore during the intervening 6 days between each of our sessions. And we'll reflect on the home practice and your progress, and your questions about home practice the following week at the beginning of each meeting. So that's it in a nutshell, the MBSR portion, of the mindfulness-based stress reduction portion of the course. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. I mean, I can't wait to take it, even though I'll be part of it. So, wandering mind syndrome. I wonder if anybody got that. I excel at that. Maybe some of you do also. Julia, how about you? What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I think just to kind of jump in and clarify kind of my role in this. So I am Julia Grimm. I am a therapist, am certified mindfulness teacher, and a registered yoga teacher. So I have a little bit of both worlds of Tyler's world, which is very therapeutic, psychological, and actually worked with Tyler on facilitating some groups in the past. So I'm excited to kind of jump back into that. So that's kind of my workspace, and a lot of the skills that we're going to talk about are very much skills that I work through with my clients on a daily basis, who are most of them trauma survivors who are absolutely resilient and kick ass on a daily basis. So that's kind of our first part of it, and I get to co-facilitate that with Tyler. It's I think a little bit more skills heavy. We're going to learn a ton of things that are super applicable, super useful, also very accessible, which I'm always a big fan of. And then kind of my more personal practice that I've really had to acquire as somebody who sees her job as part of activism, right? So that was my mindfulness practice, and I became a certified mindfulness teacher and a registered yoga teacher, because that is the practice that really keeps me going. That is something that really resources me in my day-to-day, something I feel super passionate about. And so I get to co-facilitate that part with Eric. So I'm kind of the in-between person that's going to pop up throughout the 8 weeks of content. And I'm really excited to kind of see that transition of learning the skills, practicing them, working them, and then even participating and practicing with you all toward the end of it. So that's my role kind of in a nutshell, but I'm hoping to see and hear a lot from you all with the time to come. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Julia. Julia is kind of the bridge. Like she said, she's got it all from the climate activism, the mental health component, to the mindfulness practices and deep nature connections. So it'll be great input. Thank you, Julia. Toby, would you like to talk a little bit about your role?
Yes, just really quickly, my name is Toby Holloway, and I'm going to be just a facilitator in this program. So working in the breakout rooms, basically. And this is my 3rd year on the board of the Resilient Activist, and I have been team teaching with Sammy since the summer of 2020 with like embodied activism and meditation classes and that sort of thing. So I will be in the background and just really looking forward to it. I just think this program is so spot on for what the Resilient Activist's role is.
Thank you, Toby, for being there for the support and for all that you give to the organization too. So I'm going to jump back, pardon me, back into my slides in a moment, but I want to first state that we have 54 people who registered for tonight's event. Pardon me. Obviously, they're not all here, but we are recording this. And so people have until next Tuesday to actually sign up for the research study or for the course, if that's what you want to do. So with that said, if any of you, as you listen to this, think of other people you would like to invite, you can just reach out to Tyler, get that information, or even forward them the copy of the recording when it comes out. So this is very open. The other thing I would invite you to do is know that this is our very first pass at this course, and we really want it to meet the needs of a lot of different communities, right? So if there's anything that comes up, whether it's between now and next week, or as you go through this series, that you feel like we could adjust or do in a different way or add on, that would help benefit the communities that either you work for or you with or you come from, or you know, that's part of what this is about, is to help us really enhance this program even more so than what the four of us have kind of said we would really like to offer. So with that said, let me share my screen again. And my role in the course itself, so Toby's facilitator, kind of facilitator and MC. So anything that you need during the first 8 weeks, I am happy to be there and take care of it. Tyler is kind of the mastermind behind this, but from a technology perspective or communication or anything else, I'm just really happy to have you reach out to me. But with that said, I will be leading a short session in the very last class on visionary activism. And visionary activism is just a really simple way for people to explore and figure out really what is theirs to do and how they can use meditation practices, deep nature connection, and journaling to help bring that mission to life, to figure out a mode of activism, advocacy that feels healthy and nurtured and joyful, and how to step into that and perhaps step away from or revitalize or revamp some activism you might already be doing that doesn't feel joyful and happy and uplifting, right? That because so much of what we can get involved in can be really distressful, can be really sad, really serious. And so that'll happen on the last class. I want to tell you a little bit about the Resilient Activist. We're a nonprofit. Our mission is to build resilience, optimism, and hope in response to the impact of the climate crisis, fueling the movement from the inside out. We provide supports emotional well-being and vital ecological change. And the Resilient Activist came from my own personal experience. My older son was an environmental activist. He was working on his master's in urban and regional planning, had an undergraduate degree in sociology and environmental studies. He was in a joint law program. And the more that he understood the depth, the complexity, the social injustices that were so intertwined with climate change, climate and environmental destruction, the less that he felt he was going to make any difference. And in 2003, we lost him to suicide. This course and the Resilient Activist are designed to support activists who are experiencing those kinds of debilitating emotions, and actually to support them before they get to become debilitating emotions, right? We're all offering our professional services, all of us here as part of our team, as in-kind donations to the Resilient Activists. None of us is being paid for doing content development, offering the courses, and so on, because we all feel really strongly that this is so important to the world, really. In fact, the Resilient Activists, our kind of tagline is, we believe the world needs inspired and visionary activists who have the resilience to study is to statistically, identify this activist community and their needs. So that's part of what we want to know from you. How do you identify yourself? How do we know who you are, that you are an activist? And what are your needs? What are you struggling with? What could you use some support or nurturing with? And then B, to be able to demonstrate the benefits of a program like this on your emotional well-being, that well-rounded program of the mental health support, resilience and trauma tools, the mindfulness and other stress reduction practices, as well as gentle movement and nature connection. So that's what this is all about. Because we all know that there are these overwhelmed, exhausted activists, right? We can picture them. Maybe we even can identify with them, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. So we're here to help you make a paradigm shift to promote nurturing ourselves while we nurture a healthy planet. There are a lot of new words, especially in the mental health community, feel overwhelming and depressing for people. Some of the new words you may have heard of: eco-anxiety, pre-traumatic stress disorder. This is where you know what's happening in other places in the world, and you recognize you have enough knowledge to know what probably will be happening wherever you live or where people that you know and love live. Terra fury, leading to future violence over environmental destruction and trying to protect different environments and different places on Earth. 2020 article in the Psychiatric News quoted, "Most Americans now acknowledge the reality of climate change and are growing increasingly alarmed about its impact on their lives and the future life on Earth." Fortunately, there's a formation of the Climate Psychiatry Alliance and the Climate Psychology Alliance. The Resilient Activist has partnered with both of those organizations for different programming. And some of those emotional needs are beginning to be addressed within the mental health community. You know someone who is, I invite you to please reach out to these organizations or others to be part of a supportive and understanding community. So a couple more things about the program. If you decide to take the series, we have what's called Mighty Networks. So that's an online social community. It's kind of like Facebook, but without all the junk, all the negativity. This is a private site that we have for the Resilient Activists. It's free, although we can charge for certain things. We have some courses we charge for, but part of the course will be managed through our Mighty Network site. And it kind of looks like this screen. We will be part of a private community that will just be for the people who are enrolled in this program. In fact, it'll be secret. Nobody else will even see it. So we have a couple hundred members, this as part of our Mighty Networks online community. You'll be part of a secret group that only the people registered here will be able to see. All of the handouts, all of the resource material, whatever else the presenters want to have available to you will be uploaded and available on this site for you according to the week, for their particular sessions. It's an opportunity where you can post questions. You can communicate with the facilitators or with other members. So if you go in and fill out your profile and you can see, where you're located, you could even find other people in your geographic vicinity that you might want to reach out to. So it's a really great way to keep that communication open and easily accessible to everybody taking the series. The other thing is, we have some gifts for those of you. Okay, we'll call it an incentive. I'm not calling it a bribe. No, we'll just call it an incentive for those of you who go through this series and complete all 3 surveys. So like Tyler said, there might be a 4th one, but we've got 3 that we're most interested in. So you can have 2 choices. If you're somewhere in the general vicinity of the Kansas City area, there's a brand new nonprofit called Botanical Belonging, and we will offer a $20 gift certificate. They're a nonprofit for you to go spend some time with them, either learning how to raise native plants. The director of that, Patty Ragsdale, will even come to your place if you want someone to help you figure out how to do a garden, or if you want to go for a tour of a native plant site that you know of, she will take you on a tour. Really cool nonprofit. If you're not in this area or that doesn't really call to you, the Resilient Activists would like to give you a gift of one of these 3 books that are really my favorite books about native gardening: Bring Nature Home, How You Can Sustain Wildlife with Native Plants, or A New Garden Ethic by Ben Vogt, Cultivating Defiant Compassion for an Uncertain Future. And my absolute favorite, The Humane Gardener, Nurturing a Backyard Habitat for Wildlife by Nancy Lawson. So we would just, once you complete the survey, we would ship, you get to pick which one of those books you want, and we would ship that book to you. So now we're ready for the actual details, and Tyler is going to talk about some of that. But I want to, before we go on, any questions? Anybody have anything that they want to be sure we answer? Okay, Tyler's going to get into the nitty-gritty of logistics, informed consent, confidentiality, all the fun stuff. Okay, so
Yeah.
Get comfortable.
I will keep it short and painless. We'll just pull the 2 straight out. That's what we'll do. I understand the legalese can be boring. Honestly, a lot of the informed consent stuff is mostly devoted to the research study itself. So one of the things that you will see, and originally I was thinking I'd pull it up, but I don't think I'll pull it up right now. One of the things you'll see when you first take the survey is an informed consent. An informed consent is required for pretty much any survey gathering data, regardless of whether or not you collect personal data or not. So it basically just gives the logistics associated with the research project, where the data is going, why we're collecting in the first place, like the purpose of the data, and the fact that it is going to be anonymous. So one of the things I'll be asking you guys to do is actually create a participant ID for yourself, and keep that participant ID safe and secure, and keep it in a place that you can grab it again, because that's, with it being an anonymous survey, that's the only way we can actually compare survey data across time, as if we can compare it with similar participant IDs. And I think in the informed consent, I think I actually give you guys a recommended participant ID structure. That way I still have no way of figuring it out, but you have a way of figuring it out because you know this data. So I think it involves like your mother's maiden name or something like that. I can't remember. But anyways, obviously, hopefully I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know your mother's maiden name. Informed consent for the participation. The research is different from another kind of logistical legal thing that we'll have you guys, we'll review with you and have you guys sign as entrance into the training itself. Again, you do not have to participate in research to be part of the training. That is not required. Obviously, we encourage it because we want to gather data on this and kind of do what's called an efficacy study, see if this is actually a good curriculum. We need to make tweaks, that sort of thing. So we'll actually go through that with you. I'll go through that with you a little bit on that first session very briefly, but very basically it involves like confidentiality, privacy, and kind of the sensitivity of some of the information that could come up, even though it's not kind of the design of the curriculum to bring up intensely personal things. It's not necessarily therapy, although some of that stuff could come up, right? Also give you guys some resources to reach out if there is indeed a crisis and needed help right away. I do have a couple resources I can have you guys reach out to. So yeah, privacy and confidentiality is probably the biggest portion of that, regardless of whether or not you participate in the research. We want everybody's privacy and confidentiality to be safeguarded in these trainings. We are considering recording the sessions themselves, so there might be a video release as well. Because obviously if we record these, your faces might be on the recording if you're in the Zoom session. Although I think there's a way that we can bicep that in Zoom, and individuals just see, like, for example, the handouts or the slides that we go over. So that's all I'll bore you with, unless there's anything else I'm missing. Yes, ma'am.
Can we just kind of qualify what we'll do with the recordings?
Yeah, so this is just for individuals that, the way that we have the curriculum set up, not to talk about it in too roundabout a way, the way that we have it set up is individuals can worst case scenario, they have to miss a session, they can still come back and feel like they haven't really missed anything. That said, we still want to give people the opportunity to review sessions if they have to miss them, either in whole or in part. Additionally, we want it to be a resource for individuals, even if they're not in the trainings, or maybe if any one of you guys have been through the trainings and want to review something. Like what was he talking about in session? What did he say about this or that? It would be nice to have those videos to go back on. So they're mostly for your guys' resource. We're not going to really be using them in any way, shape, or form, like for the research itself or anything like that. That's more so for a resource for you guys, and those that maybe have to miss a session here or there. So I don't know if that's what you mean, Sammy.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. And so the videos will be uploaded on that Mighty Network site according to the week. So if you did miss, or you fell asleep during part of the meditation, or anything like that, and you missed some of the pearls of wisdom that came out of the facilitators' mouths, you can pretend like you didn't and just go back and watch that section of the video anytime that you'd want to, or just to review and refresh. So, okay. What else, Tyler? Anything?
That's all I can think of until we get to the actual the sessions themselves, the study itself. And like I said, I'll cover those very briefly. We'll launch into the material pretty quick, but it does bear, for the individuals that actually sign up for the trainings and or the research, it does bear just a touch of emphasis at the outset. So,
okay. I wanted to add that right now we have, I think we had 21 people on the call a couple minutes ago. I knew at least one person had to leave early. We had over 50 people register. And what we're hoping for is to have 35 participants in the research study, or at least in this, to take the series. If we have more than that sign up, then we'll be creating a control group of people who still can, they wouldn't take it then. How would that work, Tyler? We kind of talked about that briefly.
So sorry, I forgot to mention that. So ideally, and this is ideally the individuals would be placed on a wait list. They would still do, if they were in the research study, they would still do the surveys as if they were in the trainings. And then after we're finished with this round, we would do a second round of trainings, and then they would do the surveys again. And that would, anytime you do a wait list like that, that would kind of serve as a control group, because we would want to see, are there any changes in the data for individuals that didn't go through the trainings at all? That way we can control the differences we saw in the individuals that did go through the training. So yeah, that is one possibility of utilizing kind of the excess of 35 as a control group, but we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it, I'm sure.
Right. And for the Resilient Activists, our intention is to take this course material, tweak it afterward. I'm sure we'll have some adjusting to do, but to be able to offer it again. And so anybody who was in that on the wait list would have the opportunity to take that course in the future. Even if we charge for it, we would offer it to those people at no cost, just for their support of this, first draft that we'll be running through. Okay. All right, let's see. I think I have some other slides. Hang on. Let me just see here. I kind of want to end, and we'll come into Q&A afterwards if anybody has questions, but I always like to talk a little bit about the fact that there is hope for a bright future for humanity on this planet. So if you're familiar with the legend of the eagle condor, it's a prophecy from the Amazon that speaks of long ago when human society split into two different paths. That of the eagle, which is the mind, the industrial, the technical, and the scientific, and that of the condor, the heart, the intuition, and deep nature connection. And the prophecy states that this is the time, it's kind of in the late 1990s, when the two will reunite to bring our world back into balance to ensure a more resilient future. So that's what this is all about. It's using technology, it's using ancient wisdom, and kind of combining it all together, because that's really what we need at this point. We need there, you know, as most of you know, there is no one solution to climate change, right? It's going to take a whole lot, and from a deeper understanding maybe than what we've experienced in the past. So you all should have, I know that you have Tyler's contact. He's the one that's, you know, been sending you out the reminder emails about this event. If you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be happy to hear from you. It's just my name, Sammy, at theresilientactivist.org. And we'd love to have you. If you'd like to join our Mighty Networks at this point, you're welcome to come on. I just go to the Resilient, well, I get to it from our homepage. There's a button that says join our online community. So I think that is that. I will stop the share. And are there any questions? Is there anything anybody else wanted to add that didn't get said? Welcome to just unmute yourself and speak up. Terry Lynn, the link to Mighty Network, sure.
So, yeah, and I do have a question. First of all, thank you, Sammy, for coming to the teach-in. It was
You're welcome.
unbelievable. And I almost didn't make it tonight, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is wonderful. But the one thing that you said about, like, if in future in charging, I would hope that there would be some type of a sliding scale to promote equity.
What we're really hoping for is funding so we don't have to charge anybody.
Yes. Okay. That's even better.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what this is about, is so that we have some statistics, some legitimate statistics in the survey information to show there is a mental health component to this. There is a mental health need. And now we as an organization can take that to some mental health foundations and be able to get funding. But regardless, we always have a sliding scale, and we always have a back door for people that just can't afford whatever we offer. So thank you for that, because it's a really good reminder.
Yeah. And also we have the sustainable conversations. I was talking to Kyla. Tyler, are you familiar with Shelley Bucket? I'm going to mess up her name. She's a physician at KUMC.
I know a few there. I would have to hear last.
Bhattacharya. So she and I and Beto Lugo, who is at Clean Air Now, have got a seed grant from the Health and Humanities here at the University of Kansas to do this year-long climate sustainability conversations with the community. If you are interested in knowing more about that, I would be happy to fill you in, because
absolutely,
you can probably benefit from this group.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you'd be willing, would you be willing to reach out to me and
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
I would love that.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Terry Ann, if you could include me in that too, because I met her, right? She was one of the presenters.
Right. She and her two of her students were there that presented with her. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I was thrilled with the way that the climate teach-in went in. So, and I just thought everybody was wonderful, and it made me very happy. So this is just an ongoing project that was the beginning of. So
great.
For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the University of Kansas hosted a climate teach-in. It was part of a worldwide initiative with Bard University initiating it. We were over 300 people, like 300 teach-ins, over 50 countries. It was really quite large. We had 15 speakers. Sammy was one of the speakers, and it was a 3-hour event here in Lawrence, and it was really, really good. And it's something that I think that we need to get more people aware of. And that's kind of what this is doing. And I think we can really partner and make this even more and get more people to actually show up than just the 19 that came today. Because this is so important. I love this term, I totally suffer from pre-traumatic stress disorder. I am right there. I know way too much about climatology, way too much about mathematical modeling. Yes, I totally suffer from it. So I'm looking forward to learning about this. So thank you.
I'm glad you're here with us.
Yes.
Who else has a question? Anybody? Michelle?
Tim kind of added it in chat, but I just a little bit of exactly what is the schedule, what is the intention with that, because that part hasn't been laid out very clearly, at least not sinking into my brain. So.
Yeah, and we kind of missed all the dates and everything. Take it, Tyler.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's a very good point. We should probably emphasize that. Yeah. So we are hoping to start next week, similar time as today. We every week at the same time for the next 8 weeks. So and then we're going to have a kind of a closing session as well. So I think tonight's is 1 hour. We're hoping to extend that into an hour and a half. So it would be like 6:30 to, what is that? My math, 8 o'clock. 8. Mm-hmm. Every Tuesday for the next 8 weeks. So, and it would obviously be Zoom as well. And we would send out the Zoom link the week before and then 24 hours before as well.
Yeah. So the closing session will be July 12th. So that's the 9th session. That'll be kind of the summary, the Visionary Activist Program, and a recap. And that kind of thing. And then also, what would you envision, Tyler and Eric and Julia, as far as participant commitment? Or, so someone mentioned taking home ideas for a personal practice or whatever. Do either of you have anything you'd like to add to that about kind of what an active participant might anticipate?
I can speak to that a little bit. The goal with the training curriculum that's been put together as a whole, not just with mine, but I'm sure, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure Eric would agree with this, is that I'm a big fan of what's called the learn one, do one, teach one model. I think it's the best way to learn how to do something is that you learn one, you do it yourself, you actually practice it, and then you actually teach it along. The way this curriculum was constructed was that we should be able to follow that model. These skills, these concepts are simple enough to where you could teach it to anybody, right? And you should be able to just take it straight from the session and teach it to the next person if you want to. Family, friends, if you teach your students, you name it, right? It is that simple. We try to pull back on the psych jargon and all that kind of stuff. If we have some of it, we'll explain it. That sort of thing, but we'll try to keep it to an absolute minimum. So, yeah, that's the big goal with this material, and it's going to. Eric already spoke to this. It's practice heavy. We want you to leave having already practiced it a little bit during the sessions themselves. So not only so we can be there to facilitate it and kind of walk you through it if support is needed, but also because it'll kind of get you off on the right foot, because some of this requires a little bit of practice in order to really take hold. So I don't know if that speaks to what you were talking about, Michelle. I know I want Eric to kind of answer to it a little bit too. So
yeah, for my part, I would concur 100%. We're going to be throughout the course trying to weave together explanations and the practices themselves, and then the opportunity, also providing links to guided practices during those, like I said, those intervening 7 days between the sessions, so that to the extent that you can, you'll be able to engage in these practices on your own, and then reflect back on your progress, your questions, your concerns the following week. So absolutely, the idea is that on the first day following the end of this course, you feel comfortable with your ability to weave these practices into your daily regimen.
Thank you both. And I think that whole concept of taking what you learn and sharing it with others, that's the part that really gets my heart beating, because that's the whole point. You know, our long range goal for the Resilient Activist is that every environmental and social justice organization gets the fact that their staff, their volunteers, those people are oftentimes at the front lines, right? They are, they're experiencing secondary trauma, sometimes, you know, primary trauma, and still finding the way to have that be how they make a living, you know, or how they spend so many hours or every weekend or whatever their volunteer schedule is. And the whole concept is that we want that to be recognized, how important it is for all organizations that are working in this field or any caregiving field, really, that they need to provide that for their staff and for their volunteers. So the more that we can make these practices, you know, it could be something as simple as inhale to a count of 4 and exhale to a count of 6. And that'll just kind of shift you out of fight or flight mode into relaxation mode. Like, some of it's so simple, but we want to make it simple, and we want to make it kind of part of the everyday conversation. Yes, I'm really stressed about this, or I'm so frustrated or angry or worried or upset. And that becomes part of the conversation, and someone else can say, hey, I went to this course and here's what's really helped me every time I experienced that thing, right? Or here's what helped me at a time when I was where you are. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Tyler, because it's really absolutely what this is about. And again, please share with anybody, reach back out to any of us if you've got questions or concerns. And part of what Tyler will send out is the registration link. So if you actually want to sign up, it'll be the registration link, the waiver, the, you know, all the paperwork stuff. And you'll send that back to him, and then you'll just be on course. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you next time.